No, your eyes aren't deceiving you. That really is a child's foot sticking out of an iron cauldron, cooking over a small hearth fire. And beside it is the person responsible, the mother. Her face is frozen in a manic grin, and in her right hand, dangerously close to her own forehead, is a blood-soaked butcher's knife. Her eyes are wide, the pupils dilated. She gives the impression of someone in the throes of an absolute neurological collapse. On her lap lies a lifeless, blood-soaked bundle of white linen, inches from an exposed breast that's fallen out of her dress. In different circumstances, that breast would represent maternal nourishment. Here, it is grotesquely juxtaposed with the slaughtered remains of her child. Painted by Belgian Romantic master Antoine Wiertz in 1853. In it, he captures the moment human sanity falls apart under the sheer weight of biological starvation. A mother has committed the unthinkable act of killing her own offspring for sustenance, and her expression tells us just how psychotically damaging it is. I'm sure you won't be shocked to find out that when this painting was first unveiled, the wealthy, polite patrons of 19th century Brussels physically recoiled at the sight of it. They were disgusted, they despised it, said it was totally devoid of artistic merit. But actually, it's a mirror that reflects the very world they all lived in. And the real weapon in the scene isn't the blood-soaked blade in the woman's hand, but something else entirely. The composition of this painting is incredibly claustrophobic. It's like Wiertz has trapped the viewer inside a freezing damp cellar typical of the Belgian slums of the time. Yes, you can see an opening in the upper left corner, but it offers no escape, just a glimpse of a barren, twisted tree branch against a sunless sky. And if it's bitterly cold outside, it's nothing compared to the destitute reality inside. The harsh chiaroscuro distorts the mother's facial features, illuminating her bared teeth and sinking her eye sockets into grim skeletal hollows. Her left hand is pressing hard against her cheek and her jaw. Her fingers are violently tangled in her hair, which looks dirty and messy. All in all, she is a physical manifestation of a mind tearing itself apart in response to the absurdity of her actions. If you look closely at the tendons stretching across her forearms, you get an idea of the kind of anatomical precision that could only come from Wiertz's rigorous classical training. The painter studied in Rome, where he mastered the heroic muscular forms of Michelangelo and Peter Paul Rubens. And here, he takes that style of classical perfection and puts it in a totally different, much more affecting setting. The vibrant fleshy pinks of traditional 19th century portraiture have been completely jettisoned in favour of sickly yellows, olive greens and ash greys, all set over a dark and heavy imprimatura base. It's like the subject, the woman, is actually decomposing even as she continues to breathe. And the room she's in isn't exactly in great condition either. Look at the wooden table beside her, with an overturned wicker basket spilling its contents, a rotten potato and its peelings. A ceramic plate is empty. This woman has nothing. Together, the child's foot, the woman's face, and the lack of supplies on the table give us a very clear indication of what's at play here. But still, there's more to the story. (1853) was around about the time of the peak of the Belgian Industrial Revolution. Brussels was laden with extreme economic disparity, the kind that pretty much divided the city in half. On one hand, King Leopold I oversaw the construction of grand lavish boulevards, opulent glass arcades, and a thriving capitalist empire fueled by vast reserves of coal. But on the other, in the unventilated cellars of the Marolles district, it was a very different story. Tens of thousands of displaced peasants from rural areas had flocked to the city in search of work in the textile and manufacturing sectors, but all they got was utter destitution. Hunger, Madness and Crime was painted by Wiertz immediately following a catastrophic period of economic depression and the devastating Flanders potato blight of the late 1840s, an era historians dubbed the Hungry Forties. The mortality rate in the working class slums was hit hard by outbreaks of cholera and typhus, and starvation was common. The Belgian state provided basically nothing in terms of social safety nets, and charity was a luxury largely controlled by the church, who dished out help only to those they deemed morally compliant. Wiertz realised that society was perfectly okay with the systematic and quiet starvation of its own people, and that from the comfort of velvet-lined cafes, the bourgeoisie were easily ignoring what those less fortunate were going through. And here, he forces the upper classes to witness a mother literally cooking her own child. Wiertz isn't inciting an intellectual political debate here, he's using oil paint to trigger primal physical revulsion. Back in the 19th century, folks within the art establishment liked their paintings glossy on heavily varnished canvases. Varnish, in a way, creates a bit of a physical barrier. It's like a sheen that separates the viewer from the subject matter. Make something shiny and glossy and you can kind of sanitize things like violence or gross injustice or brutality, basically turning human suffering into something that's passive, suitable for polite consumption. It's safe to say that Wiertz was not a fan of that trend and wanted to eradicate that barrier. He pioneered a chemical technique called peinture mat, in which he mixed oil pigments with precise ratios of turpentine and unrefined beeswax, eliminating surface glare and giving his work a dry, chalky finish. The result of that is a raw and aggressive texture, something that absorbs ambient light rather than reflecting it. Stand in front of Hunger, Madness and Crime and you get no dazzling protective glare to shield you from its impact. The matte surface makes the image hit the viewer that little bit harder, making it feel more real and suffocating. What's more, Wiertz refused to sell his major works to public collectors, declaring the commercial art market to be nothing more than a prostitution of political ideals. He struck an aggressive deal with the Belgian government in a bid to maintain creative control, offering them his entire body of work upon his death in exchange for a fully funded, massive custom-built studio in Brussels in which to house them. Essentially, he blackmailed the government into building a monument that, via work like Hunger, Madness and Crime, showcased their own civic failures. Pretty smart when you think about it. Now, about that real weapon I mentioned earlier. Have you spotted it yet? Look at the bottom left corner of the floor. Next to a single discarded turnip lies a crumpled piece of printed paper on which the text is clearly legible. It says simply, contributions, or to put it a different way, taxes. This is the catalyst that we can safely assume caused the devastating turn of events in the painting. The mother didn't just run out of food by chance, she's in the midst of this psychotic break doing something so unbelievably horrendous because the state drained her of her last remaining resources. During the 1850s, the Belgian government levied huge consumption taxes on basic necessities in order to fund their rapid industrial expansion. It's that very taxation that snaps the mother's sanity beyond repair. Wiertz has effectively engineered a legal indictment disguised as a horror story. He's accusing his government of systematically driving the working classes into poverty and destruction in order to build their empire and make the rich richer. He's saying that beneath the tailored silk suits, the classical music, and the grand architecture of the time, the state was complicit in the unnecessary deaths of its own citizens. The painting is still in Brussels today, and it's exactly where Wiertz left it. The pigment is drying out and the matte is slowly degrading, but it's no less impactful. Now, staring at a 19th century depiction of cannibalistic infanticide may not sound like anyone's idea of a good time, but if you're fascinated enough by Wiertz's work to want a reproduction of this painting, you can get one right now at viewcrypt.com. Hang it in your dining room. It'll be a great conversation starter.